Hey, welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast, where we talk about cabinetry, millwork, woodwork, closet shops, the kind of things that nobody else on the internet talks about. But today we're going to be talking about how to hire a great foreman. And I have a guest on here, Andrea Hoffer. She's an expert on hiring. And the reason I want to have her on here is because she doesn't just have experience as a recruiter, she ran her own business and she's got really, really deep insight into how we can hire the right people to build a team. You see, you and I go to work thinking that we're building cabinetry, making furniture, but we're not. We're actually building a team that builds the furniture. Think about that for a second. I'm building a team that builds the furniture. Just like my reminder to all of you that you come to this show and you talk to me because you want to be a business person who just happens to run a wood shop, not a carpenter who's building cabinets. It's a little bit different. A joke came to mind. I know you guys in your feedback said get rid of the dad jokes, so I have. They're all gone except for this one here. I always give 100% at work, 13% Monday, 22% on Tuesdays, 26% Wednesdays, 35% Thursdays, and 4% on Friday. If that's the kind of team that you've got, then you're definitely going to enjoy the interview with Andrea. She's got tons of great insight. It was really enjoyable to interview her, and I know you're going to pick up a lot from this. So buckle up your headphones and let's get into it. We'll see you on the other side. Andrea Hoffer, how are you?
Good. How are you, Dom?
Good. Nice to be with you again.
You too.
I
I'm
like the
looking forward
background
to
of your
this.
screen. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I could tell you're a pro. You've got a really nice professional background there.
Oh, okay. If that's all it takes to impress you, then I'm in good
Yeah,
shape.
we set the bar low.
Okay.
We set
Thank
the bar low and we bump into it all the time.
you. Sounds good.
Yeah. But you and I are here to talk about something actually pretty interesting, especially with this crowd here on this show about the foreman. But before we get to that, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Andrea Hoffer, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these forward facing cabinet makers and millworkers all over the world?
I really don't know.
Still finding myself.
No, I I'm an expert in recruiting and hiring and really just people in
Mm,
general. I've been studying people and why they behave the way they do as long as I can remember. I mean,
yeah.
when I was a child, I was fascinated by why people show up each day in a certain way or why they react in a certain way. So it sort of guided me through my career. And I, eventually opened a spa, which you're
Oh, well, that tracks. Sure.
yeah, I know. You're like, well, how does that
Yeah.
I found that hiring for a spa is not the easiest thing in the world and keeping people. And I had already had a very successful career on college campuses where
Mhm.
I studied in depth about helping people be their best and why people behave in certain ways and how to hire and onboard them. And I threw it all out the
I
window.
was gonna say, what happened when reality hit and you turned the
Yeah.
keys into your own, your I
Yeah.
want to say shop, but you know what I mean? It was a spa, but it's the same thing, right? You've got
It is.
technicians who are
Yes.
working for you and you're trying to hit certain standards, certain times.
Yes. And there's so much more on your plate that you don't realize when you're an employee.
Mm,
And when you're in charge of and the facilities too as well. So I kind of just went through the day to day and was like, I don't need to follow all those processes I learned. Like I just need to keep these doors open.
right.
And then after about a year and a half, 2 years, I'm like, what am I doing? I've learned better than this. I know there's a better way to hire and keep
Well,
the team engaged.
yeah, what were the symptoms? Tell me, and people are going to be surprised because we're talking about, my show's about cabinetry and millwork, and you had a spa. But
Right.
this will be super interesting. When you and I just having a business conversation, what were the things that happened? What were the symptoms? Let's see what you have to say.
Well, I mean, the basic one is turnover, constant,
Mm,
especially at my front desk. And one of the things that I noticed, and it's so obvious now, and I'm like, how did it take me so long? But I was hiring people who were great with customer service,
mhm.
the front desk, but it really was a sales position. So I needed somebody who both was great with customer service and sales. So
Right.
I ended up, kind of helping some turnover along. And then other people
It's
who,
okay to say it on this show. We're all owners.
okay,
Sometimes you gotta let people go. Not all the time,
exactly.
but
Let them,
sometimes, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, quite a bit, because they just weren't performing and I needed to keep my doors open.
right.
Right. And it was even the same thing with massage therapists to a certain extent where, um, they didn't want to,
Book a follow-up.
yeah, they didn't want to do the follow-up. They didn't want to recommend, how often to come in for massages because they said they're not salespeople. And I often would ask, well, tell me, why'd you get into massage? Oh, and then, they talk about their passion and how much massage helps
Yeah,
people. And I completely agree in that. That's one of the reasons I
you
opened the.
started. Yeah.
And then I'd say, so do you believe that people should come in for regular massage? And they're like, of course. I'm like, so how is that going against who you are if you recommend for
Yeah.
to come back?
And you know what? It's so interesting that you say this, but let me bring it back to our industry. For those of you who have designers and
Mhm.
they do that, I have a flower bouquet in my hand and like, well, I'm a kitchen designer. I'm not here to sell. Selling is low work. No, it's not. It's the work that keeps us all working, right?
Mhm.
And it's the same with our foreman. Our foreman thinks maybe just in many cases, and people, while you're driving, don't raise your hands, but you can think about raising your hands. How many of you have a foreman who thinks it's all just about getting product out the door instead of building a team of people who work together to get products out the door? And it sounds like you had that realization, that little tick in your mind went, oh, I don't just need a friendly person up front.
Right.
I need a friendly person who asked for the order.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And who, recommends what we have to offer and matches it to the person's needs.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's really important. It wasn't just about we're selling massages. It's, what is their need for massage and how often do they need to come in? And do
Yeah.
we have them with the right therapist?
Well, I'm going to put this challenge out there for everybody. Let's do this as we transition into the topic. For those of you that are listening today and take action on something major that you learned from Andrea, I want you to give yourself a treat and book yourself for a massage.
There you go.
And if you want a double treat, make sure book a couples massage with your partner, your wife. Then you'll get brownie points and a reward for taking action on this. How's
Yeah,
that?
there you go.
But I invited you here because you have a system, and I'm a big fan of systems. I'm a big fan of simple systems because they work. And you have a system for finding people that's called the D.R.E.A.M system. And I asked you, I said, can you help us use the D.R.E.A.M system for finding a foreman? And some people call them supervisors, lead hand, charge hand, subassembly lead, head engineer. But walk us through that process that you developed over the years on this D.R.E.A.M format for finding the right people.
Okay. And it's not just about finding the right people. It's
Oh,
about recognizing them and keeping them.
I love it. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, have you ever done the math on what it costs to turn over a person?
There's a lot, yeah, there are actually a lot of different formulas and it depends on the industry. I've heard
Yeah.
everything from like $4,000 to a percentage of the annual salary,
Yeah.
but it can be very high.
The simplest way I say is it takes about 6 months for that new person to roll into their position and be operating on all cylinders. So let's just say 6 months, and that way people can apply their own math. But then you've got to find the right person, which I actually think is part of your D.R.E.A.M system. So I won't take away from it. But that takes time too.
Mhm.
So you could be staring down the barrel of 8 months or 12 months if you lose the foreman you've got, or you've selected the wrong foreman and you got to hit reset.
Right.
Anyways, let me put it in you're the expert. I'm just the host.
Well,
Andrea,
you
walk us through the D.R.E.A.M system.
okay. So it starts with D, which is define.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where a lot of people fall down or they skip this step because they want to just fill the role.
Right.
And, I always ask, did you take time to truly define, what are the success traits? Who have
Mm,
you had in this role in the past that has been very successful, and tell me about them. I love stories. So the more you can share stories about people who have been successful, people who haven't been successful, you're
Right.
starting to really get a true picture of who it is that would fit in your role and who fits in your culture.
And
So
who
you're
won't?
talking about a foreman, every organization, every company is going to be different, but in general, you just said it, you need a leader,
Yeah.
right? So you're going to be looking for someone who can motivate the crew, keep them focused, someone you can lean on, someone is keeping things going when you're not there.
When you're not there. And that's the reason that we get a foreman. It's not because we want to go home and kick back, put our feet up, and watch some TV. Well, you can do that too.
Yeah, I don't see
It's
anything
total.
wrong
It's total. It's on the table. Absolutely. I don't want you to not do that. But really, we have other places in the business we need to go focus. And I'll just say maybe upstream or downstream. Upstream being things in the office, including estimating and engineering. Downstream being installations or other things that come. There's just other places the owner needs to put their attention now that the floor is running well.
right. And once you've clearly defined who you're looking for, you can start to figure out, okay, so what's the messaging to reach that person? And that's where you start to get into the reach and maybe where they even hang out. So you're getting into that fine part of
I
the
love
reach
it. Yeah.
and how to, recognize them. And we'll get to that when we get to the A, which is
Yeah.
a SAT.
I just want to double down on this define thing though, Andrea, because I think it's so important and people miss it because they're like, oh, this is the bright colors in the sky that Dom talks about. What's the culture? What's the values? But it's everything. And so I'm going to ask you this as a challenging question. Can I
Okay,
do that?
of
Do you
course.
mean to tell me that if I go and write down on a piece of paper a list of the perfect foreman, it's somehow going to magically appear out of the sky?
I wish I could.
Oh, I want you to say yes. I want you to say yes.
And you want me to say yes? And well, I don't, this might take a turn, but I actually believe in the power of attraction or the law of attraction.
Yes, so do I.
So yes, and if you do get very clear about what you want, you will start to attract it. You're about to say
I was
something.
just going to say something, and I know who to say no to because when
Yes,
they don't match what's on paper, I'm like, I got to say no. Great person, super nice. I know them from church or softball. Everything seems that they're just not it.
right.
Yeah.
And you'll know why they're not it. Because I'm not a big believer in going with gut. I know a lot of people are, but the more you understand your needs and who you're
Mm,
looking for, you might still have the gut, and that's okay, but you still need to tie it to something
yeah.
specific. And I am going to throw in, if it's okay, here and there, some AI tricks to
Oh
help
yeah.
you get more clear
Sure.
on this. And I don't know if your audience uses chat GPT quite a bit. Do you feel like no?
Yes. Let's say yeah. If they don't, this might be the thing that you might be the person that reveals it to them. So how
Okay,
how
so
do I use ChatGPT to
I'm
help?
going to make it really easy. You can sign up for a free account. Go to OpenAI, and it will tell you. It's been so long since I've signed up for an
Yeah.
account that I don't remember, but I remember it being pretty simple. And it will go and will say something like, "How can I help you today?" I would just tell it that to interview you, and I can, you can get very specific with the prompt, but I don't want to, go into too much detail and confuse your audience. I would just say, you are, because first you have to tell it who it is.
Yeah.
You are an expert talent consultant or recruiter in the construction industry, and
Mm,
how to help me find and really truly define the foreman that I need. But in order to
right.
do that, you need to ask me questions. So I want you to interview me with at least, let's say, 10 questions to help me get much more focused and detailed on who I'm looking for. And you love stories, so you can ask me stories about successful foremen that
Sure.
I've come across or worked with, and not successful foremen. And you'd be amazed at the questions that the chat will ask you and how it will help you to get defined. And then you'll go back and forth with it. And then you can say, well, can you bullet point this for me? Or can you sum it
Yeah.
up for me? Or however you like your information. And now you're like 90% there. You might even be 100% there.
Love it. That's a great use of artificial intelligence. And it
Yes,
works. It works.
I'm a big fan of using it as a strategic advisor or strategic partner.
Yeah. All right. So that's D. That's the D for dream. What does the R stand for?
R stands for reach. And this is where
Mm,
you need to be able to talk in a language and talk to the people. And when I say talk, even just designing your job posting. So you have now a clear definition, right? So that information should truly help you
right.
to reach the people, to speak to the foreman who is who you want,
Mm,
who's attracted to the job that you describe. And I love to start those job postings with 4 to 5 engaging questions. And I usually write them last because I want them to truly sum up everything I'm looking for.
sure.
So let's take, someone you can depend upon, who when if you need to leave and do other things for the business or put your feet up, you can count on the foreman. So you might even want to start it with a question, this is off the cuff, but related to, are you the type of foreman that enjoys being the leader of the day to day,
Mm.
something that really pulls in the right people and repels
And repels the wrong ones. I'm so
the
glad you
wrong
said
one.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if they're not someone who likes to be a leader, that will start to repel them. So you want to get even, more and more granular in those 4 or 5 questions. And keep in mind, most people will not read your whole job posting. So that's why I try to put as much as possible in those engaging
First
questions.
couple lines. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as you go down, then you can get more into, what the day to day is like and what your culture is like and what the results are. I'm big on not sharing, this is what you're doing day to day. Maybe you'll have that in one small section, but really sharing, this is what you're going to accomplish.
Mm. Day to
This
day.
is, you're the ideal candidate if if these are the results you can get us. Something like that. And if you're, I will throw out there, anybody listening, if you would like the job posting formula, if you've already signed up for ChatGPT and then go to jobpostingwizard.com, it will bring you right to my custom GPT. You don't have to
Perfect.
log in or put any identifying information. It will let you use it for free, and it will ask you, it start interviewing you based,
On
on
the
the
questions.
defined part,
Love
and
it.
then create the posting for you. And you're like, 40% there
Yeah.
after that.
You know,
Go ahead.
you bring up an interesting data point that, we run foreman training here. It's one of the things that we do. We train foremen and supervisors. And the current class has 26 companies in it. 26 companies. And so we surveyed them about just around the thing that you asked, like what's their behavioral style? Like how do they act and see the world, and what drives them? What doesn't drive them? Like what, sort of pushes them away. 43% of the people responding were one behavioral style over another. And then the vast majority was, between 2 behavioral styles. Most people were, they wanted steadiness. They wanted to be in a company where there were systems and procedures. And if those systems and procedures weren't there, they wanted to be the ones to build them, but then stick to them.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting, right?
Well,
But you
and
learn those things when you ask.
yeah. Well, and one of the things I didn't mention in the D is not just defining who you're looking for, but also what you have to offer.
Mm.
Why do people stay with your company and why do they leave?
Right.
And be very authentic about how you share that in the reach stage, or actually really in all the stages. Because like you said, some of those people will be very attracted to systems, and maybe you're not big on systems and you don't want them. Although I truly highly
Oh yeah, no, we're
recommend
big fans
having.
of chaos. We're big fans of chaos here. Yeah, we
Well, I've actually worked with a lot of companies who are, they want to attract people who are comfortable with chaos. And a lot depends on the industries. And so I've, needed to design materials that attracted people who find it exciting and can work in that chaos. And usually it's also
mm,
fast paced. But then there are other companies like you're describing who, we need people who can follow process and they're not going to be going off in their own
madly off in all
direction.
directions, as we say.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So with reach, you also want to know where to hang out, which I mentioned, and look for groups, and it could be online or offline. Maybe it's a local Home Depot, even
Yeah.
that Foremans might frequent in your area, or other kind of hardware stores. See if they'll allow you to put a sign up
Yeah.
and make it easy for them. I usually recommend QR codes, but if your industry, your group doesn't usually use smartphones with QR codes, then maybe it's texting, or maybe
Yeah.
it's just going to a website, but make it as easy as possible for them to initiate that application.
That first stage. Yeah, texting is so easy, but
Mhm.
still those little pull-off tabs at the bottom. You remember how they, I mean, I'm old, so I remember when they used to be on phone poles, like lost cat, last
Mhm.
seen running from a coyote. You're like, uh-oh. I
Right.
don't I don't know. I don't want to tell these people. But the little phone number on the bottom that's
I know
just,
exactly.
but those still work. QR codes work as well. But having
Mhm.
somebody text you, and we've heard the coolest things that our clients have developed. People have put their job ads at uh, like obviously woodworking shops, the places where you'd go to buy Felder or Festool equipment, which is not the highest end equipment, but it's everybody can buy it. And the kind of people that wander around there like to do hobby work and they might have their own stuff. But people are putting it at gun ranges. People are putting it on church bulletin boards. People are putting it at car shows. Because if that's where your people are, then advertise to them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a great idea. And then engage, you
Oh,
know,
that's right. The E. We're spelling
c-
the word dream, right? So engage.
tell them
Yeah.
our dream. Yeah. And engage can look in lots of different ways, technology wise, or, talking on the phone. But the big thing about engage is continuing to communicate with your candidates. Don't let them fester and wonder, what's happening.
Right.
Keep them moving along in the process. And if you're going on vacation or something happens and it's going to delay the process, let them know.
Mm,
Because otherwise they'll just, if they don't know what's happening next and when, it's going to confuse them. It's going to make them think you're not interested
right.
anymore, and they'll just look elsewhere. And especially if you're looking for process and system oriented people,
Yeah, that's true.
then treat them that way.
You want them to know that you have a process for hiring.
Exactly, exactly. We always say, um, to communicate with candidates who are still within the process, haven't been hired or rejected yet, every 3 business days or less.
Mm,
So that even if it's just to say, we're still interested, we just wanted to let you know, we're just a little slower in the process than we expected. But we'll be getting back to you. That way, they know you're still thinking about them.
yeah,
And
and they don't go looking somewhere else.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you can even, the engage stage is also when you're not hiring, but that you may have some hiring needs in the future. As you meet people on work sites or at church or, wherever you're hanging out, that could be a good candidate in the future. Um, you know, to get their information and just text them every once in a while and, ask them how things are going. Keep in contact
Right.
with them.
Okay. I like it. So it makes sense. I like how your system has evolved
Thank you.
into this because it's hard to make something sound simple,
It is. It
right?
is. And I for years this was a 3-step system. Actually, my book that is on Amazon, but I made it. It was written as a 3-step system, and then a few years ago, I was like, this really isn't just 3 steps. It's
Mm.
it's 5, and it actually fits in Dream because our tagline has always been we build dream teams,
Oh, well, there you
and
go.
so it was just like, wow, how did
It
it
was
was,
right in front of you the whole time.
yeah, I was very excited about that.
Hey, are you curious about ways to develop your foreman and make him or her into the best leader that your floor or install crew could ever have? Well, we've got something here for you. It's called the Foreman Development Self-Assessment and Career Planning Tool. It is a fantastic tool. It's being used by cabinet and millwork shops right now, and you can see it as well. Just send me a text message. My cell phone number is 315-903-7853, and just say Foreman Tool, and then I'll know which one to send you.
Now we're on assess, which is I do a lot of speaking about, especially around how to interview. So many people have
Oh,
taught.
yeah. And listen, I can't say I'm great at interviewing either, but can I share a quick story before we start?
Of course, go ahead.
One of our clients was talking to us and he got caught in a conversation at his in the showroom, which is at the front of his building, for 2 hours. And he was talking to somebody who was really nice, but he didn't want to hire. He just didn't know how to end the interview. So because we're not trained on interviewing as mill workers, as woodworkers, we're just not trained in it. We know everything about profile edges and how to use a molder, but we don't know how to interview. So please, I think this is a great step. How do we
And
assess people?
it's most people that have never been trained on,
That's
on
fair.
interviewing. So um I wouldn't feel bad about that. So we, first of all, in that situation, if the person had started the interview, just sharing, the purpose of today, I want to get, here are the 3 things I want to cover
Mm,
today. I'm going to give you an overview of what we're looking for, ask you some, kind of walk through your history and ask you about your experience with some different things. And then we'll talk about next steps. And this should all take about a half hour
mm,
or an hour, whatever you want to. I always tell the candidates at the beginning about how much time we have and how I want to leave about the last 10 minutes for questions so that they know, okay, we're only going to be here 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is that we designate. So that's a little tip to maybe um, you know, stop that. But even if you didn't do that, or, you want to end it, you can say, okay, now I've asked all my questions. Do you have any questions for me? And they can ask a couple of questions and then you can say, okay, so the next steps are whatever the next steps are, and we'll be getting back to you within 2 days or whatever your timeline is.
right.
So they're great little things. Now, the questions you ask, first of all, I would highly recommend structured interview questions. So you're asking every candidate the same questions
Sure.
and they're tied to the job and tied to what you're looking for, tied to that defined
Mm-hmm.
part. And I always start my questions. Here's my formula. Most of our questions start with, could you share? Now that's very different than tell me this or
Hmm.
give me this, which is originally how I was trained to ask very directive
Right.
questions. But what we've learned over the years, and I mean the interview gurus of the world, is that the more comfortable and conversational an interview is, the more honest you're going to get
Oh,
as far
okay.
as the responses.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want them to feel like there's a big target light on them. You want them to feel like they're just having, a conversation and they have some control over it. So that subtle could you share
Mm.
always, it just sort of in the back of their mind makes them feel like it's a little more of a conversation. So I always say, could you share? And here's the power phrase, a specific example. And I always
Mm.
emphasize it. I even on all question sheets that I do, I capitalize specific example to make sure I and whoever else is using it emphasize.
Remembers it's specific.
And then you connect it to something specific with the job. Could you share a specific example of, when you were, in charge of a crew and
Mm.
there was one person who just really wasn't living up to expectations?
Well, that never happens.
Of course not.
No, that's a made up situation, Andrea.
Yes, but just for the hypothetical.
Right, right.
The big thing about that is you leave it there.
And you just listen.
You just listen. You don't ask, how did you help them? How did you resolve it? What did you do? You don't even
Mm.
say. Just leave it there and see what they share. Because if you keep asking questions like that, the ones who were probably going to be great hires are in a pattern are going to give you specific examples because they listen and they have specific examples to share. And they're going to share with you exactly how they addressed the situation and what they learned from it. And
Mm.
especially if they failed, if they didn't, they didn't handle it well, they're going to share that and then how they've changed for the future. But if you tell them, I want
The
to know
answer.
how you resolved it, they're going to come up with some answer.
Okay. So give us the sentence structure again for how to ask that question properly.
Yep. Could you share a specific example and then of whatever the situation is? Then you're going to connect it
Mm.
to
So
job.
let me try and see if I get it right, just for the context, the way we talk here. Could you share a specific example of a time an install went completely wrong?
Perfect.
And then just leave it there.
Just leave it there and see. Then now the people who are not ones to be proactive and make sure it's the install is corrected and any
Mm-hmm.
customer service issues are addressed, they're just going to complain and probably blame
It's
somebody.
funny. I was going to say that. I could see
Yeah,
them going, well, that company was a disaster all the time. It was my everyday.
exactly. Yeah. But do you see the difference in asking it like that or saying a very similar question and saying, and how did you resolve it? Which is
Right.
how most of us tend to ask questions. And I get
Mm.
pushback on this formula all the time from usually from HR people because they're like, you're making them feel like they're failing, like you're giving them the opportunity, you're pushing them for their failures. And I was like,
No, you're not pushing them for
no,
anything. It's an open-ended question.
right.
Yeah.
Sometimes nothing, and I'm not trying to put down the HR field, but we're trained to to bring people up and to make them feel good, which is great. I believe in an interview, we do need to leave some room for them to fail because we need to know how they're going to show up on our job because
Mm.
they are going to fail sometimes. We all fail often. And I
Yeah.
usually even
I
ask.
think I think this goes back to your opening premise when you were talking about the reality versus theory in life. You
Mhm.
learned all these things at university and then you went and opened up your own company and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is not working. We've got to make it real. And so we pride ourselves actually on this show about real world advice. right? And even the coaches on my team, sometimes we're trained to turn off the mic, turn off the recording, and just, this is how it works, right? Because it's not, sometimes it doesn't sound nice, to your point. It doesn't sound, but it's real. Like sometimes you got to tell somebody, look, you're late every day. It's not going to cut it. But if you talk to an HR person, they're like, well, you got to have this nice conversation. You got to write it up 3 times. You got to put them on a PIP. And how about you're late every day by 15 minutes? It means you're stealing 61 hours a year of my time and everybody else around you. It's not going to cut it. That's the answer.
Yeah. And I just want to say there are reasons for writing up 3 times. And,
yes.
there is a compliance piece there
yes.
I don't want your audience to think I don't believe in the HR way,
but there's also ways to get things done.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got D. This is what I wrote in my notes. D is define. R is reach. E is engage. A is assess. And M is
motivate. Yes. So now you have found somebody, you got them interested in your role, they've accepted the role, and today is Thursday, they're starting on Monday. Okay, do you relax now? You forget about them? No, you need to, you want to reach out to them. You want to, tell them how excited you are. Maybe you're telling the rest of the crew all about them. Maybe you're giving them if it's okay with them, their phone number so they can welcome them. Right. Be ready for the person when they start. What tools do they need? What do they need? A workstation? What are the things they need to be successful on the job? I love telling this story where I was hired as a meeting planner at a well-known hotel brand many decades ago. Maybe not many decades, but decades ago. And I showed up.
A little while ago.
Yeah, a little while ago. And I show up, and this is very basic, but they bring me to a little workstation because it was an open concept. That's fine. But there was no chair. And I said, where's my chair? Well, there isn't room in the budget right now to replace your chair. It might be another 5-6 weeks. And I was like, well, how do I sit down? They're like, well, everybody comes and goes in this office, so you just pull a chair when somebody goes to a meeting. I stayed at that job maybe 2 months, because right away they were showing me that they didn't care about me on the very basic level, right? But it goes beyond that, and you want to make sure the person knows where to go to the bathroom, or when they can take breaks, things that make them feel comfortable. And then as the a week goes by, or even the first day, check in. How's it going? Any problems, anything I can support you on? Anything you need to be more successful? Anybody give you a hard time? Especially, that maybe
is hazing part of this company?
Right. Exactly. So,
we put together an onboarding SOP specifically for that, because I get caught in this as well. I'm busy and I'm not that special, and I'm busy. And so everybody else out there who is special, by the way, they're busy doing the things they've got to talk to engineering. They got to talk to estimating. There's a problem with the CNC. There's a problem with the CNC operator. Then we got a customer problem. Then we got an install that's gone wrong. And then we got to go talk to the account. Like, all of those things happen in the first hour of the day. And so now you want me to onboard somebody properly? I don't know where to start. And so we tend to ignore it. I'm channeling the spirit of the audience. It's just coming out of me right now. Some Ouija board. But having a system makes it easy. It's not really that hard once you have a system in place to go through a checklist.
Yeah.
And the checklist is nice. I have found people love checklists, and they like to tick the little box. Our hours are, we start at 7 a.m. We end at this time. Okay, great. Because we start at 7, the expectation is you're here at 6:45. Okay. I've just told them. And now it's not a secret surprise for the next 15 years that they work for me.
Yep.
Right. And this is where we park. This is what we do. This is who you call for this problem. It's just a list. Just put it in place. That's why we built the onboarding SOP, because you have to take the randomness out of the world.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know if you've ever read the book Checklist Manifesto.
No,
You
that
might
sounds
like
like
that.
a Donnie book, though. I got to tell you.
Yeah, I think you like that book. But I'm big on checklists, and we used to do that at the spa. Even like through it, it didn't matter how long you were with us. Each day you had a, well, we initialed, saying they did it.
Sure.
It was a thing. And then with training, we each had to initial, the trainer and the trainee, saying that they understand whatever it is that we have to be in at 8:45, or, so those type of things. I love it. It's so basic, but we forget it all the time.
Yeah. I forget it too. I have to be reminded. And usually I'm reminded when a mistake happens, like when something goes wrong. And I think to myself, oh, I just let that person down, because when I hire people, when I bring them on, I want them to go home to their family. Let's just say we've hired a guy. And so he goes home to his wife. I'll just say that. So I want his wife and him to sit at the table and go, oh my God, we finally got the job that we need as a family. This is the best place you've ever worked. That's what I want. I actually want that at the kitchen table. And so I work towards that. And sometimes I fail, guaranteed, but I try to win all the time.
I love that.
You just want that kitchen table conversation to be like, oh, you finally got the job you deserve, honey. Yeah. Okay. And then they're bought in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're bought in.
That's really great. Might have to steal that.
It's yours now. So the dream format for hiring a foreman. I think not that everything wasn't important, but I think what I hear from you a lot is intent. It's not just, your system here isn't about randomly wandering. Even your first stage of define, put down on paper what you want in your ideal, we'll say foreman, it could be estimator, it could be install, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
But write it down. And yes, they magically appear. You called it the law of attraction. I call it the law of magically appearing.
Okay.
But they do. They really, it really does appear, because when I'm clear about what I want, the world somehow provides it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy how that happens, but it's very true.
I think it really does have a lot to do with knowing who to say no to as well. Right. And then just that person just pops out of everything and you're like, wow, right in front of me the whole time.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Do you have any closing thoughts for us? Any closing comments on this whole finding your perfect foreman and onboarding them and keeping them happy and motivated?
No, I think we went through quite a bit. That what I normally just reemphasize, but you just did it, is just getting clear on who you're looking for, and just, not taking somebody who walks through the door who, kind of looks like the perfect person.
They might do it. Yeah. Fog a mirror.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. The warm body. Yeah.
A warm body. Now you mentioned some resources, because you talked about AI and how we can use it for, hiring and onboarding people, which it's definitely a great tool.
Yes.
Then you mentioned a tool that you have. Can you repeat that one?
Yes, it's jobpostingwizard.com. It's just all one
posting.
Posting. Yeah. I had I got that URL and I just have it point directly to the custom GPT because it makes it easy to share.
Neat.
Okay. And it's a great place to start. It will interview you to help with that defined stage.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you kind of a question off to the side of that. When you talk about job postings, that implies to me Indeed or some other posting boards. What are the other sort of crafty ways that you've seen people go about finding employees?
Well, we do a lot of online sourcing, and I think even for foremen, you probably could do some great sourcing in Indeed. I'm not a huge fan of just posting in any of these, LinkedIn or Indeed. But if you do post in them and put just a little bit of money towards it. Don't put hundreds of dollars. It's a lot of
You mean
people.
like boosting the post or making
Yeah,
a paid
right.
ad,
Do a
right?
paid one, but you can do it like what I often do is I think it's like a minimum of $20 a day. I'll do it for 3 days because
Mm,
it won't put more than $60 towards it in most cases. And I make sure within those 3 days that I take advantage of all of their sourcing capabilities. Now, I know you said your audience isn't, that into being on the computer, and I totally get it. But if you do use Indeed and you just go in, it will say, okay, if you put money towards this job, I forget the exact words, but we'll send you candidates that match what
mm-hmm.
you're looking for. And sometimes, often, at least lately, I found a lot of them to be a good match for at least people to get them to apply. So you just have to make sure you schedule in, put on your checklist
To do it.
3 days in a row to go in and look at the candidates and take advantage of, I think it's 30, they send you a day for those 3 days,
Mm.
and just send them a message. It's all templated. You can use the template they have, and then people will write you back if they're interested. And often they are.
Often they are. Yeah. You gotta.
Uh,
Now you mentioned you have a book as well. What's the book called?
It's called Hire, HIRE. And then the second word is HIGHER.
Okay. I get it. That's very
You
good.
get it?
Hire.
Yeah. But actually, if you go to my LinkedIn, which is LinkedIn, I don't know how many, slash Andrea Hoffer, it's I write about the dream system a lot. And I do a Wednesday article.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so you might find some ideas there as well. And I do share in most articles different AI prompts to help you, because
Oh,
I
that's great.
mentioned earlier, I like using it as a strategic partner.
Yeah. An extra brain. And if you had an extra pair of hands or an extra brain, that would be it.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
Andrea, if somebody wants to find you in this big wide world, how do they do that? I mean, we know about the book, we know about the job posting.
And the
Website.
LinkedIn, well, my website is AHA Talent Experts, AHA Talent Experts with an S.com. Or you could email me at Andrea, ANDREA, at ahatalentexperts.com.
Perfect. Well, I hope people reach out to you, especially if they have questions. I like your dream system. It makes sense. I know from my own experience that making it sound that simple takes a lot of hard work. So high five to you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show, Andrea. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Well. Andrea, thank you so much for being our guest here today and shining some light on that recruiting and hiring and building a team topic. You came from the spa industry, but it didn't matter. It's the same things that we deal with in our business. We've got to put together that great team. I want to remind everybody that the culture that you and I drive as business owners has just every single impact on how our team's going to perform, because what you and I put up with is what we're going to see in the company. Matter of fact, that's one of the topics we talk about very specifically at the very beginning of the Foreman training. Now, we've just finished the last Foreman training. If you're interested in attending one of the next ones, you got to let me know so that you get on the list, because it fills up. We had 26 companies in the last Foreman training, 26 different companies in the last training. It's huge. So there's definitely a big need for that out there. And if you think that your foreman or your supervisors need that training, then you should be in there. And by the way, we're not just talking about shop production. We've got install managers in the foreman training. We've got people running engineering departments in the foreman training, right? So it's not just before or after the CNC that this matters. It matters throughout the entire company. If you've got a leader in your company who has people reporting to them and you haven't trained them or onboarded them, then this is your chance to do that. So just shoot me a text. You guys know how to get in touch with me. It never has changed. Just send me a text. My cell is 315-903-7853 and say Foreman training. And then we'll talk about Foreman training. All right, folks, thanks for checking in. Again, I look forward to the day when you and I can have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine across the table from each other like real humans. Let's get back to that. Okay, have a great day. We'll talk to you again. Bye.